The EUTHYPHRO dilemma is a philosophical question that's based on a Platonic dialogue called the EUTHYPHRO. The original dialogue is a discussion between Socrates and an interlocutor named EUTHYPHRO. They bump into each other at court. It happens to be on the same day that EUTHYPHRO is at court to prosecute his father for murder, apparently. And Socrates also happens to be at court on the same day because he's getting charged with various things, including corrupting the youth, not believing in the city's gods, and inventing new gods. So they both happen to be at court on the same day, and they run into each other. Socrates asks EUTHYPHRO what he's doing there, and EUTHYPHRO explains that he's there to prosecute his father on charges of murder, because that's the pious thing to do. So Socrates says, well, what's piety? If you can tell me what piety is, maybe I can use that to help defend myself in court. So Socrates asks EUTHYPHRO what piety is, and EUTHYPHRO answers and defines piety as whatever the gods love. One thing to keep in mind is that the original EUTHYPHRO story is happening in a polytheistic environment. So there's multiple gods. That's very important when it comes to EUTHYPHRO's definition of piety. One of the heavier-handed critiques that Socrates launches at EUTHYPHRO in the dialogue is that you have different gods loving different things, and sometimes they love opposing or contradicting things. And then you get a situation where the same thing is both loved and not loved, or even hated by a god, because there's more than one god. Then you run into this problem where how it's possible for the same thing to be both pious and not pious at the same time. So that's one of the critiques that Socrates launches, but this doesn't happen in a more modern monotheistic setting where there's only one God in question. But still, even the one God can change his or her mind, right? I'm just going to call it an it. Even the one God can change its mind from time to time. In any case, that's one of the critiques that Socrates launches at EUTHYPHRO's original definition. EUTHYPHRO and Socrates go through the process of trying to figure out what the best way to define piety is. So in any case, without getting more into the dialogue, that's where the EUTHYPHRO dilemma question, the philosophical question of the EUTHYPHRO dilemma, is based on. The EUTHYPHRO dilemma is about whether the property, whether it's goodness or any other sort of property, whether it's objective and exists intrinsically in objects, independent of any subject, even a God subject. Subjects don't need to be human. Subjects can also be gods. Or whether these properties are things that are subject dependent, even if you want to say it's dependent on a special type of subject, like a god, but not human subject. In any case, so that's the EUTHYPHRO dilemma. Atheists typically like to use this dilemma because if you grab either horn of this dilemma, you run into some trouble as a theist. On the one hand, if you say that objects have intrinsic goodness that are objectively existing, if you grab that horn of the dilemma, then, I mean, it's not that you can't explain it, but you have some explaining to do. You have to explain how it is that the God commands me to do something bad. And this goes against a lot of things that are said, for example, in the Old Testament of the Hebrew book. The famous case is Abraham. God tells Abraham, go kill your kid. Presumably that's a bad thing to do. You shouldn't do that. If, some voice talks to you and says, go kill your kid, you're going to think that's not something God is telling me to do. That's Satan. And you're not going to do that. You would be able to independently assess even God based on this objective property that things may or may not have. So that's one problem that you run into if the theist chooses to grab that horn. If they grab the other horn, which is to say that properties like goodness are dependent on subjects, but a special sort of subject, the God subject, let's just say, then you run into this other problem. Whatever this God entity says, okay, this is a good thing to do, go do that, then you should just do it. And that means that if the God says, go rape a baby, go kill your kid, that's something that you should do because that's a good thing, because the God commands it. So then you have this other issue that you're going to have to explain as a theist. And either way, when you start trying to explain this about God, you sort of end up looking a little bit ridiculous because then you have to kind of make stuff up or bite the bullet and say something difficult like raping babies is a good thing sometimes, depending on if the God says to do it or not. So you'll have to say weird stuff like that. And then obviously you're going to get a lot of social criticism. But either way, however you go, it's a very hairy situation, and it doesn't usually turn out very well for the theist. It's not that they can't, but the answers that the theist can give are controversial. So that's sort of the issue. And that's why the EUTHYPHRO dilemma is so interesting and a useful tool for the atheist to put the theist in the hot seat. So that's the EUTHYPHRO dilemma. I have to go in a bit, but if you come back when I do my live, maybe we can do that when I have more time. God is all forms. These people, I swear, where do they just come up with this stuff? It's crazy. Just make stuff up. It's all bullshit. You people. Oh my God. Get your head out of your ass. I'm going to cut, obviously, all the random bits out and make this clip about the EUTHYPHRO dilemma. Yes, and like, follow, and subscribe, and all that stuff, okay? All right, thanks. Talk to you guys later. Bye.